Was the SEC semifinals a preview of the Final Four? Was it better than the Final Four will be? And is Auburn in trouble? Find out next on Locked On College Basketball Game Night.
You are Locked On College Basketball, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome into Locked On College Basketball Game Night. I apologize I wasn't with you last week, but I cannot wait to talk to you guys this evening because we are into March and the real nitty-gritty of March. Welcome into Locked On College Basketball Game Night on Champ Week. I'm Leaf Tulane. You guys know me. I'm a host of Locked On College Basketball part-time with Andy and Isaac, host of Locked On NBA Big Board, credentialed NBA draft analyst, and contributor, like I said, to call this very channel, Locked On College Basketball. And I'm so excited to host this show about what I love most. Saturday's chock full of college hoops, and this was Champ Week. It's been awesome. I've been glued to my couch watching games. My schedule has been play ball, watch ball. It's been awesome. Cannot wait for madness and the brackets to be revealed. We'll talk about a lot of that coming up next. First, I want to thank the title sponsor of FanDuel. FanDuel, always excellent. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $2,000 in bonus bets when the first $5 bet wins. So check that out. And then also, we're going to talk in the first segment about the heavyweight SEC clashes. Second segment, we'll talk about the likely one seeds, Duke and Houston winning their conferences. And the final segment, we'll talk about the Big Ten setting up the final and what else stands out from this week, plus my thoughts on the bubble. We'll also have JJ Jackson on, host of Locked On Blue Devils, to talk about his Blue Devils and the one seeds. So let's start about the SEC. Tennessee beat Auburn in the opening game of the day, and it was the deserving winner. Tennessee didn't upset Auburn. Like, I want to be clear about the terminology. Like, Auburn and Tennessee are pretty evenly matched. In Jordan Hare, that's their football, in the jungle, they played earlier. Neville Arena is what it's called. Neville Arena, they played earlier this season, and it was a 53-51 game where Auburn outlasted and out-toughed Tennessee. But they match up well. They're physical by nature. Tennessee takes away some of the better options outside of Johni Broome, and Johni Broome can be effective, but you can't necessarily beat a Tennessee team into submission. That team does not do that. They matched and even exceeded Auburn's physicality in this game. But what stands out to me the most is they took away Tahad Pettiford, who really struggled. They took away Chad Baker-Mazara and Miles Kelly, who to me, and I've said this for a long time about Auburn, I talk to my friends about this a lot, those guys are the engines for this Auburn team. What I mean by that is when Auburn's been at the record efficiency they were as the top team offensively for much of this season and looked like a team that could not be touched and were clearly the best team in basketball at certain points, it's because those three guys, let me reiterate, Tahad Pettiford, Chad Baker-Mazara, and Miles Kelly, they were able to be efficient and dynamic. They score in transition, they hit open threes, and you have to stop them, and you can commit a double team to Johni Broome, stop him, and those guys kill you. I think teams are learning to make Johni Broome beat them. Say, Johni Broome, you're going to have to be so spectacular that you can beat us. And he's been so good that they've had a chance to do so. But I think the reason Auburn looks more mortal as opposed to immortal is because Johni Broome's having to score and the other guys are being taken away. The scouting reports have shown, let's get in front and top lock some of these guys. Don't get them shots. Take away their preferences. Take away some easy three-point looks and make Auburn work exceedingly hard for catches for Johni Broome, make him work for that real estate and make him work for each basket. I tend to not trust teams with bigs as their best player because at the end of games, it's hard to be so good in those situations. And I think Auburn in this one needed Tahad Pettiford. Even though he was struggling, they needed a dynamic scorer out there as opposed to Chad Baker-Mazara and Miles Kelly trying to create. Auburn's struggling of late, and thus Auburn has been less effective because of these adjustments. And we're going to talk about the Tennessee side, but I wanted to answer is there a reason to be concerned about Auburn? I do think the lack of true point guard play and the lack of, hey, I'm going to find someone to score a basket when Johni Broome isn't doing it. Johni Broome's the one who's swinging the ball, and these guys aren't shooting as well as they were. Kelly and Baker-Mazara, they're playing non-scorers in Cardwell or Moore at many times. And the trio of explosive scoring guards/wings haven't been as explosive. Auburn becomes susceptible. They're still really good. They still have a chance to win against an excellent Tennessee team. They still had a chance to win against Alabama in their final game of the regular season. Texas A&M, I excuse as a game. Texas A&M desperately needed, and Auburn had already clinched the SEC. Auburn still, to me, is one of the 4 best teams, and I still think they're a better basketball team than Tennessee. But I am concerned about how their performances for not only the last 4 games, but the last 8-9 games have been less than optimal, and you got to peak heading into March. That said, Bruce Pearl has a little bit of time to have the team look themselves in the mirror and say, look, we're going to be this good, and we can do it. And I think Bruce Pearl is a guy who can motivate like that. Now, let's go to Tennessee. Tennessee is excellent defensively. That's always the case. There's nothing you can say that's going to take away that fact. But Tennessee's improved from middle of the pack offensively in many years to top 20 offensively. They're third in defense, which is not a surprise, but top 20 offensively is impressive. They're able to create offense off of the pin down actions they create for Chaz Lanier. Chaz Lanier comes off and draws attention. When he knocks down shots, they're awfully tough to beat. They get supplementary performances from Igor Milicic, from Jordan Gainey. When Jemai Mashack scores, that's gravy. Zakai Ziegler, he's how important he is as the engine for this team. But Tennessee gets second chances. They play a brand that supplements their incredible defense that makes you work super hard. They also make you defend the whole time on the clock. They run a ton of motion, and they play late in the clock, and they help the way they play. It's complementary football is a term that's used often. I think they play complementary basketball, and they're mature, and they know their roles. And I think in this game, they said, we're comfortable with saying Janai Broom has to beat us. We're going to take away these wing scores, and we have the personnel to do so. And Tennessee is peaking at the right time. Now, the discussion is going to become, if Florida, who we're going to talk about just in a second, is beaten by Tennessee, who gets that final 1 spot? And Tennessee has an interesting claim because they've beaten Alabama. If they beat Florida, they will have beaten Florida twice, and they've now beaten Auburn. That's really, really hard to do. That said, Florida has a way to put it away if they win against Tennessee, which I believe they will, because the Gators are the best team that's been hiding in plain sight all year. I've been thinking, man, they're super fun to watch since the beginning of the season. I released a tweet. Every year I talk about teams that I think are better than where they're ranked in preseason. Florida and Texas Tech were my 2 this year. Both of them I think were pretty good predictions. Now, the thing I will say is Florida, I completely underestimated even then. I had them around 12 in the preseason. I thought they were pretty awesome, but I thought, it's a fun Sweet 16 team. I like the way they play. No, this team for the last 2 months of the season has been national championship good, and yet they've been the afterthought. They've been Auburn and Duke. No one has a chance. Alabama's more dangerous. Tennessee's more proven. Florida's a problem. They're excellent offensively, absolutely excellent. They have an All-American guard, and at times I think their front court's better than their back court, which isn't just an All-American guard. Like Purdue has an All-American guard, and the rest of their team isn't that great outside Trey Kaufman-Wren. Like Fletcher Lawyer, like it's Andy and Isaac always say apologies to the Lawyer family. Like apologies to Fletcher Lawyer. He's not that great. No, Will Richard and Elijah Martin are excellent guards playing with an All-American and Walter Clayton, who's the guy who stirs the drink. But then Alex Condon, Tommy Houck, Ruben Chinyelu, Micah Hanlockton, all those guys are big time. Those dudes and their depth, top tier. I've been thinking privately to myself, and I'll let you guys in on this because you guys are listeners. I was hoping Florida would lose so that I could take Florida to make the Final Four, maybe the championship game, maybe the championship depending draw, and they'd be a 2 seed and it would be less popular because I want to win my bracket pool. It's a risky strategy. Last year I knew UConn was going to win. I talked about it on ad nauseum on this, and I thought, you know what? A team that I think has the best chance of beating UConn of anyone in the country is North Carolina, and North Carolina didn't get there. It's a risky strategy, but what Florida does is they're efficient at 3 levels offensively. They get to the rim, they shoot threes, and when I'm saying 3 levels, it's not necessarily that they shoot mid-range jump shots, but they get into that mid-range and create either a dump off to the rim and kick out for threes, and they're able to repeat that, whether it's through passing through Alex Condon, through Tommy Houck, or is it penetration from guards. I love the way Florida plays defensively. They're very stout. They give up a lot of points, but that's because they score a ton. They play quickly. They get a ton of rebounds. All these rebounds they create extra possessions for an already dynamic offense. They force turnovers. They get out in transition, and they boat race teams like Alabama, who I thought was playing their best basketball of the entire season coming into this. I thought they were excellent. Alabama looked great in the first half to me, dictating tempo. They didn't capitalize on a lot, but Florida was right in the game, trailing by 2. They went on a 33-11 run opening up the second half, and it didn't even feel like they were peaking that much. They were just getting transition baskets, but Alabama, who's very good offensively, gets to the paint, knocks down threes, Well, their issue is they don't knock them down consistently enough, but they take a lot of threes, and they were making them early, scoring 47 points in the first half, looked helpless. And they turned the ball over to the pressure and length and depth of Florida. Florida is a far better team than Alabama. I think Florida is better than Tennessee. I think Florida will beat Tennessee, but I'm very curious to see what the committee will do should Tennessee beat Florida and who gets the 1 seed. That's something we can discuss, and I'm sure Isaac and Andy will on Monday's rendition, reacting to the bracket. I can't wait for Selection Sunday. This is like Christmas to me. I've been up just talking to friends about basketball all day the last 2 days, and I would love nothing more to have this happen every day. It's the best. It's absolutely sensational. Now, speaking of sensational, Duke, they might be the team to beat. We're going to talk about Duke coming up next with my good guy, JJ Jackson, host of Locked On Blue Devils. Talk about Duke's performance without Cooper Flagg, how he feels like Duke is playing, and what their ceiling is. Obviously, national championship teams they might want to avoid the most, and much, much more coming your way next. But first, a word from Nissan. We're all about the stats because numbers don't lie. And when it comes to all new Nissan Armada Pro 4X, the numbers are on an MVP level. With the ability to tow up upwards of 8,500 pounds, it can quite literally carry the whole team, plus the gear, wherever you need to go. It's powered by a twin-turbo V6 engine, delivering strength and the performance to handle the highways, the back roads, and everything in between. And with room for up to 8 people, the Armada Pro X is built for big crews, big adventures, and even bigger and better memories. Whether you're exploring off-road trails or rolling up in the area, the Armada Pro X brings power, versatility, and style wherever you go. Take your adventure to new heights in the all-new Nissan Armada Pro X. Learn more at nissan.usa.com. Also, let me tell you guys about this little thing called FanDuel. We talked about it a little bit here, but FanDuel, since it's the best. Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 in extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who's cutting down the next. I mean, you can pick your favorite players. I like to do that. I've got my eye on a few underdogs this year. And when the Cinderellas are dancing, you want to make sure that you're encouraging them even a little more. And FanDuel makes it easy to back those guys with spreads, totals, and game props. If you have a player like Jack Kolke that you think is going to go off, staying with the action, you just got to look at all the games, and the tournament's happening almost every day, and there's always something exciting to bet on FanDuel. So the FanDuel app is simple to use, and when I win, I get paid instantly. That's the best part. There's no waiting around, and you get your funds back instantly. So visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. Welcome back to Locked On College Basketball Game Night, and I'm pleased to be joined by JJ Jackson of Locked On Blue Devils, who his Blue Devils won the ACC. I'm not shocked that Duke won the ACC without Cooper Flagg. I'm not shocked that they won it without Cooper Flagg and Malik Brown. They beat Louisville pretty handily. It was close in the first half, but I want to ask a simple question. Duke's really good, but how good are they, and what makes them so good?
It's the depth. I mean, the fact that you were without the National Player of the Year in Cooper Flagg, in so many ways you were without Malik Brown, who does so much for this team defensively. Their ability to shoot the basketball from outside is something that makes this team special. They really struggled in those first 2 games in Charlotte, but were able to really rein in on those 3-point looks, particularly Tyrese Proctor having a big night tonight against Louisville in the championship. But Leaf, I mean, you and I talk about it a lot on Locked On Blue Devils when you're there with me. Duke's ability defensively to keep them in games and how deep they're able to go with other guys stepping up and taking advantage of their opportunities is so huge.
Yeah, Duke was able to hold off a furious North Carolina rally, and of course there's the craziness that happened. But to me, the story is Cooper Flagg handles so much of the workload when he plays, and Duke's able to stave off 2 teams that are hungry, have a reason to win in the ACC, and do so in different ways. Today, Kahn wasn't electric, but he was able to get to spots, create offense. You saw Proctor hit 6 threes and was very easily able to generate those shots. And typically the shots that are generated that are catch and shoot are because of Cooper Flagg, and they still sustainably got great shots. So that's what encouraged me. Now I'm going to flip the question. We talk about what makes Duke great. What are the warts? And I understand depth could be one of the concerns, and so feel free to talk about that. But what are the warts that you think could inhibit Duke from winning a championship? Because it feels like it's championship or bust this year. Like Final Four doesn't feel like a great result for this talented of a team.
Undoubtedly, I definitely want that first national championship for Duke in a decade since 2015. And I think when you look at this team, I mentioned the shooting a little bit earlier. They got 6 3-point makes tonight from Tyrese Proctor in this ACC tournament final, but Con Knippel didn't make any from the outside. They started 0 for 13 against Georgia Tech. That resulted in a 14-point deficit that Duke had to overcome. And losses against the likes of Kansas and Kentucky, they really didn't shoot the ball well from the outside. And it just feels like when you think about upsets in March or teams not being able to get the job done, if you've got a poor shooting night, I feel like that's the easy way to get out of this. But it's so true, especially for a team like Duke, who is so lethal from 3-point range when they're really on and in rhythm. I think that really concerns me. And that would probably be the biggest thing that I would point to there.
Are there any teams that you say, whether it's even a 2 seed, or 2, 4, however you want to put it out, basically, are there any teams that are not going to be on the one line along with Duke that you say, oh man, I'd like to avoid them?
Yeah, I think if you look at the 2 line, I think somebody like St. John's with their length is someone that, I think they can match up pretty well with this Duke basketball team, their size and whatnot. And then Tom Izzo just gets it done in March with Michigan State. And we've seen so many March Madness classics. I go back to 2019, Leaf, the Zion Williamson, RJ Barrett team. Yeah, and it was Michigan State who knocked Duke out in the Elite Eight, and Michigan State was able to go on to the Final Four. Those 2 teams in particular, I would love to see them not be in Duke's region and Duke's bracket. But as we know, if you want to win the championship, you got to go through some of the best teams. So I definitely understand that, but those would be 2 of those teams I'd be wary of.
Yeah, Michigan State to me feels like they're playing very cohesively. They're playing aggressively. They're scoring as a unit. But they don't scare me for Duke, actually, other than the name of Tom Izzo.
Yeah.
But the reason they don't scare me is what they do well is they get out in transition, they run, they turn teams over, or they offensive rebound, get out and run. But when they're in the half court, they're susceptible. They don't necessarily blow your brakes off. And Duke's excellent in half court defense, and they don't turn the ball over that frequently. And they have the size. They're not a tremendous rebounding team by statistics, but they have the size to mitigate some of that rebounding prowess of Michigan State. So that actually, to me, feels like the best 2 seed. But obviously, you got to play the games. Follow-up question for you here.
What do you think of St. John's, though? I mean,
St. John's, I'm with you. I think the thing about St. John's, and I would favor Duke against both these teams. The thing about St. John's that makes me more wary if I were a Duke fan, which I am not. If I were a Duke fan, I would be more wary of St. John's because they turn teams over at such an elite rate,
right,
that it makes teams uncomfortable and they rush. Like St. John's has trailed by double digits in against Marquette, and then I think they were down 9. They might have been down 10 even in this Big East game championship against Creighton, in which they dominated. They wear you out. They physically wear you out. And this is a team, though they don't play like freshmen, that is reliant on some younger guys. This is a team in St. John's that's absolutely rugged. They're led by upperclassmen. They're led by team players that have been there, done that. And I don't think Duke's necessarily going to be overwhelmed by that, but they can be overwhelmed by the physicality that's not necessarily been imposed upon them because they haven't played teams that have that level of athleticism, that have that level of coaching tenacity instilled in them. So I do think that's a difficult matchup. I don't think that Duke would ever feel like they can't compete in that matchup because I don't think St. John's can score enough points, but so it never is going to really blow you out because Duke is very good defensively in their own regard. So I think that's going to be a rock fight if that were to happen. I'd actually love for that matchup to happen and see Patino against Duke. So that one, I'm rooting for the bracket to break that way and be the East region.
And we've seen so many big games between those 2 schools over the years, between Duke and St. John's. We're due for another one.
Yeah. So my last question for you about Duke, and I might have a follow up, so maybe not last, but at least penultimate. I'll say that. Duke. What goes right for Duke to win a national championship? And don't say health. I want to preface that. Don't say health. What goes right for Duke to win a championship, and what goes wrong should they lose to a St. John's? Should they lose to any team in the championship in that route? Because Duke does feel infallible in some ways, and they've lost close games, and they showed, hey, we got the monkey off the back beating Carolina, but Carolina's not very good. Like they shouldn't make the tournament. So what is the recipe for Duke to win, and what goes poorly and the recipe falls apart if Duke were to lose?
I think you see Cooper Flagg take over and do Cooper Flagg things when he's available and ready to go. I think he reminds the world why he is the best player in the sport, why he is going to be the number one pick once we get to the NBA draft coming up in June. I think also for Duke, they're able to knock down those shots from the outside and really get a dominating interior presence from Kamen Malawach and even Pat Gamba II, who's really continued to improve each and every time he's been out there on the floor. I think those are the really big things that would go right in order for them to win it all. In terms of going wrong beyond the outside shooting, like I talked about a little bit earlier, you would just maybe worry about the Duke freshmen playing younger. Seems like over the last few years in March, we always go to those experienced teams that understand the stakes of it being win or lose and go home. I don't necessarily have that worry for this Duke basketball team with the 6 freshmen that they've got out there contributing to the squad, but it is something to point out every time March Madness gets going and these real games get played.
Yeah, I'm with you. Okay, I've got one last one for you. Every team in the country is included. What team do you say, man, I do not want to see them? Like whether it's the championship, Final Four, whatever it is, what's the team that scares you the most? And why?
For a while it had been Auburn in so many ways, just because we saw such a big game between those two teams there at Cameron Indoor Stadium back in December, and Auburn's ability defensively, offensively to get so many things done. They've been playing so well throughout the course of the season. Now they're in a stretch where they've lost 3 of their last 4, and I think I can join the train that everybody seems to be hopping on, this Florida train right now. And the Gators with all their guards.
Why has everyone got to join me?
Yeah.
I've been on the Gators train.
You're the wisest guy to follow, Leaf. So I think that's
why I appreciate that until I lead a bunch of lemmings off the cliff.
Yeah. No, but I think just with Florida, their depth, their ability to score so well, that's frightening when it gets to March. And again, their ability to match up, with this Duke team, I think that would be really concerning.
I agree. And funnily enough, so I've referenced this to you. I'll let you guys who listen on a little secret. One of my best friends that I've been talking basketball with him since, like high level basketball, since we've been about 10 years old, is a Duke fan. We got kicked out of practice once arguing about who was better, Nolan Smith or John Shire. So like we've been talking about Duke basketball and just basketball
for a while. Yeah.
And I told him weeks ago, Florida's the team you don't want to play. And I thought they'd be a 2. So we talked about this and I was like, you want to avoid Florida. You want to avoid Florida. Looks like they're going to be a 1. Could be interesting if they end up at 2 if Tennessee were to beat them. So I'm very curious. And I think, would you agree that Duke's going to be the number 2 overall seed? That's still Auburn's to lose as the number 1 overall, despite losing 3 of their last 4?
Yeah, I would say so. I think it's those two teams, 1-2. I think Duke makes it really, really difficult. If Auburn had beat Tennessee, and even if they lost the SEC tournament final tomorrow, I think we'd be, having that conversation that, yes, this is definitely Auburn, the number 1 overall seed. I think Duke put a whole lot of pressure on the committee playing as well as they are at the end of the year here, and Auburn having lost 3 of their last 4. But ultimately, when you just do the resumes, you put the numbers side by side, I think we end up with Duke as that number 2 overall seed.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think that it's not a foregone conclusion as it once was, but I still think about an 80% chance Auburn takes the number 1 overall seed. Everyone tune in, watch the selection show. It's awesome. I'm sure JJ will enjoy it. I definitely will. Thank you for hopping on, and make sure to take care of yourself in the storm warnings where you are right now and everyone in that region.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Excited for March Madness to be here. Make sure you go check out Locked On Blue Devils. Thanks for the invite tonight, Leaf.
Absolutely. Well, coming up next, I'm going to tell you guys about the Big Ten semifinals and also the Big 12, where Houston punched a 1 seed. But first, a word from Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Well, that happens. I just went on a trip and I felt that way. Well, between dining out, online shopping, entertainment, whatever it is for you, it's easy to lose track. But that's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. There's a difference. When I started using Monarch, I realized just how much I was spending on food, delivery. And now I budget much, much smarter and save far more. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress that those arguments can cause. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. All righty, welcome back to Locked On College Basketball Game Night. It was a pleasure to have JJ Jackson on talking about the Duke Blue Devils, a very, very likely 1 seed. Let's talk about another very, very likely 1 seed. That's the Houston Cougars, who won the Big 12, and they went 19-1 doing so, and then solidified it by winning the Big 12 tournament without, you could argue, their best player in J'Wan Roberts. J'Wan Roberts missed the Big 12 tournament, and it was precautionary. He's going to be back. He's going to play in the tournament. And I talked about how Florida has been a national championship contender hiding in plain sight. I would say Auburn took the headline. Duke was, if Auburn was 1A, Duke was 1B. And Houston's steadily been the most consistent team, even more so than Duke and Auburn, because those teams were beating teams sometimes by a ton, sometimes by a little. Houston was just beating people by a regular margin. It felt like about 10. And they've done so ever since they started the year poorly. They lost to Houston. They lost to Auburn in the city of Houston. They lost to San Diego State in overtime. They lost their lone Big 12 game in overtime against Texas Tech. They lost in overtime to Alabama. Milos Uzan has become significantly better. Kelvin Sampson talked about he wasn't ready in November, and it looks like he was using his big brother's ID to get into the bar. And now he's old enough to get into that bar. That was the analogy he used. And it's so true. He looks the part as a top-tier point guard in collegiate basketball. LJ Cryer was named the most valuable player by Kelvin Sampson. He's become more than just a scorer that was a sniper at Baylor initially in his career. You have all these pieces that are complementary. The best defensive player in all of college basketball, in my opinion, in JoJo Tugler, surrounded with other guys with length. Terrence Arsenault, Malik Wilson, Sharp, hitting big shots. Houston shoots significantly better than they have in years past, and they already were an analytics darling. Let's go look at the analytics. Houston's third overall in KenPom. They have the second best defense and 11th ranked offense. If I were to ask you, what's the best offense that you think Houston could possibly have, there's no way you'd think they're on the borderline of the top 10. But that's the truth. It may not be as pretty and flashy as some of these other teams, but they get it done substantively. They do so by beating you up, but they generate good shots for themselves, and they don't let you generate good shots. They turn your offensive ineptitude against, like when you play them, you're inept offensively, and they turn that into offense for themselves, along with creating those extra possessions they always do by crashing the glass. This team is the most capable Houston team because I think they had more talent in years past, like the team of Jarris Walker, Mark Sasser, Jamal Shed, but two of those guys were hurt entering the tournament. A groin injury for Sasser, and Jarris Walker was banged up as well. Last year, Jamal Shed, you can make the argument, would have had them in the Final Four should he not have gotten hurt against Duke. But he did. He got hurt. You don't know what's going to happen, but this team's healthier, at least at this point, and I think plays with less pressure on one particular player. They have more guys who can get it done for Houston. So Houston beats Arizona. Caleb Love was actually spectacular to start this game. And that speaks more to even Houston's character and culture. They were able to win this game while struggling to contain Arizona's best player in a game where they were missing one of their best players. Arizona is one of the few teams uniquely equipped to match the size and strength of Houston. Yet Houston's culture prevailed. They created better shots down the stretch, scored when they needed to, made the free throws, got the stops when they needed, and eked out a win. But it felt like they were the better team for the final 25 minutes of this basketball game. And that matters. In a game that, Houston would have been a 1 seed either way, in my opinion. And they didn't have a starter. And they still dominated a really hot BYU team. And then they beat an Arizona team that I think in terms of physical attributes is one of the teams that's more difficult for Houston to impose their will upon. And they still win this game. I'm in on the Cougars. I've thought for a while that this is a 1 seed that people will not think about because of Auburn and Duke's excellence. I'd advise you not to sleep on the Houston Cougars, even though many of you will say, oh, they always look good and they always win a lot of games. This team went 19-1 in Big 12 play. The year after they started 1-2 in Big 12, everyone said, oh, get ready to to play in the Big 12. Well, they won that year too. And then they were the Sweet 16. They were 1 seed, and their best player got hurt, an All-American. This year, less dependent on one player, more dominant in league. I'm in on Houston. Now let's go talk about the Big 10, where the finals are yet to happen. That'll be between the Wisconsin Badgers, who knocked off the red-hot Michigan State Spartans, and the Michigan Wolverines. Michigan able to score a game-winning layup by Donaldson after what appeared to be a defensive breakdown by the Maryland Terrapins. Maryland had scored on free throws from Derek Queen, set up a defense, and right down the middle, like the Red Sea parted, Donaldson shot up the middle and scored a left-hand scooper, and Michigan was able to win. They've been much maligned for getting blasted by these Maryland Terrapins recently. They got beaten badly in another game. But in the Big Ten tournament, Dusty May's got the Wolverines surging. Danny Wolf and Vlad Goldner are a formidable interior duo. We've known that all along. Can they get the supplementary pieces, the guards, to get going? Donaldson hit a big shot to put them ahead, and then the game winner as well. So Namari Burnett, Roddy Gale, guys like this, X factors matter. I still think Michigan's a susceptible team when it comes to March. They'll likely be a 4 seed. I'm skeptical of the Michigan Wolverines, but I could be wrong. But it is impressive that they've hit that valley where they looked like they peaked early, won a lot of close games, weren't winning by a lot, then lost a couple by a lot of points, and now have beaten the brakes off of Illinois. Or excuse me, they did not. You look at what Michigan does. Let me restart. They beat the brakes off of an Illinois team. And it surprises me that you watch them play. And I'm going to restart here because I watch Michigan play basketball, and I think to myself, that team doesn't have the guard play to get where I think they need to go. And I think, hey, you need to be able to generate good looks always. And excuse me, they beat the brakes off Purdue, and Maryland beat the brakes off of Illinois. Maryland beats the brakes off Illinois because of their interior presence. And Purdue, what Michigan does well, I think Purdue struggles with. What they're able to do is Purdue has two players that really score. It's Braden Smith, and you put pressure on him, you zone up on the backside, and you take away with your length Trey Coffin-Renton's ability to score. That one made sense for them to win, but I didn't think they could beat a team that dominated Illinois on the interior the way that Maryland did. And Maryland has bigs that I think are equally as adept, maybe even better. And then they have better guards than you. I didn't think they'd win this game today. I'm impressed that they've been able to regroup, beating the brakes off of Purdue, winning a tight game here after being much maligned for a couple of drops. I'm not trusting them necessarily. I would favor Wisconsin in tomorrow's game, but I'm very impressed by Dusty May's adjustment. Now let's go to Michigan State and Wisconsin. Wisconsin, I've said for a while that the Big Ten, if a team were to make a deep run in the NCAA tournament, I thought it was going to be Wisconsin. But then Michigan State went on this tremendous surge where I don't think anyone predicted that they would go after losing to both Southern California schools that aren't particularly great. They lost to both of them and then lost at home to Indiana, that they would, then go and beat Maryland, Wisconsin, Michigan twice, and and Purdue. And you see that, and Michigan State does that. Then they beat Oregon handily the other day. And they come into this game, and you think, maybe Sparty's notable. But I still felt like Michigan State doesn't score as easily, as reproducibly, I don't think they do. They score as reproducibly as Wisconsin does, who generates good looks all the time. They hit 19 threes the other day against a UCLA team that plays defense. Like, that's what Mick Cronin does. They knock down threes. And then they play a Michigan State team, and they mostly corral them to not getting out in transition. And even when Michigan State went on those surges that Cohen Carr throws down a dunk and it counts as 6 points, as Tom Izzo says, and it really does, they were able to rebound, regroup, and find a productive shot. They were able to get to the free throw line via John Tonje, getting to the rim, balling physically, get to the rim, hit open threes. Blackwell, Tonje, Winter, Crowell, Klesmit's back, and that matters a ton. This Wisconsin team with Max Klesmit, who's their vocal leader, their lead by example guy as well, really has a chance to make a deep run. I think these are the two best teams, Michigan State and Wisconsin, the two teams I'd have the most faith in going deep. I also like Maryland, but I'm really impressed with Wisconsin. I'm happy that Max Klesmit is getting some time to get his legs back under him and make a run for the Badgers. If I had to preview for you, I would guess that Wisconsin's going to beat Michigan. I think they're the more well-rounded team, and I think that leads them into a nice setting for probably what I'd say is a 3 seed in March Madness. And I really am pleased to see Wisconsin pick 12th in the Big 12. And then Greg Gard does a coaching masterclass and finds what works for his team and how to generate the looks. It's a lot of three-point shooting. It's anti-Wisconsin basketball of old. And I really think that Wisconsin has a chance to make an Elite Eight. And that's the team that was picked 12th in their own conference. That should warrant Coach of the Year. If it weren't for Tom Izzo having his team on the verge of being a 1 seed, should they have won this? I don't know if they would have gotten it, but they're going to be a 2 seed, and they're hot. This is a really good Michigan State team. Great win by Wisconsin. I think Wisconsin beats Michigan. Now, finally, I want to talk about St. John's. I mentioned them when talking to J.J. Jackson, and St. John's wears you out. They were down against Marquette. Cam Jones, All-American, absolute stud, was balling, really struggled when it got going because you can't score against St. John's pressure. And if you do, you can't continue to do so. And that's what Cam Jones found. That's what every team's found. Creighton had an early lead, and I never blinked an eye. I thought, you know what? Like, Creighton could win this game. Not a chance. St. John's has an All-American in R.J. Lewis, who scored 29, 27 of which came in the second half. And he's a small forward. He's got length. He's switchable. He's defensively minded, and he's a good slasher. If he's knocking down shots, watch out. They have a first-team all-conference guy, along with R.J. Lewis, in their front court and Zuby Ejiofor. And yet I think their best player, maybe their most vital, the guy that stirs the drink for them, if you will, Kadari Richmond, takes over a game with his defensive prowess and ability to get into the paint. And then you have supplementary pieces that know their role and will, if they knock down shots, this is a Final Four team. Rick Pitino is, in my opinion, the best tactician and motivator in college basketball. He's been able to win wherever he's been. This could be a year where he cements himself as the coach to beat in terms of best ability to get the most out of his team. So watch out for the Johnnies. I know that's not a hot take now, but no one would have believed on March 15th in the wee hours of the morning, March 16th now, Selection Sunday, that St. John's would be a 2 seed. So watch out for the Johnnies. I wish you that once more. As for the bubble, I'll be very curious to see how Indiana and North Carolina are treated as blue bloods of the sport. I don't think either of them have resumes deserving. However, there weren't that many bid thieves. You saw a team in UCSD take care of business, and they would have been a team that you wondered could have had a bid thief. Maybe they would have gotten at large. Drake took care of business. All these type of teams from the mid-majors. And then you look at Colorado State. That's the only team that I think could have been a bid thief, but maybe in doing so, they took away a bid from Boise State. I think that North Carolina will be left off, and that'll be strange. If they are in, and if Indiana is in, it'll be as the first four. They'll be heading to Dayton. I'll be very curious to see what the bubble says. I want to hear your guys' thoughts about your bubble thoughts, who you think is going to win it all, and are you guys concerned about Auburn, and much, much more. I love that you guys are listening. I cannot wait to talk to you next Saturday and even earlier in this week, to previewing the bracket, reacting to it and all. Thank you guys for listening. It's been a pleasure. Thank you guys for making your first listen Locked On College Basketball Game Night. And for your second listen, check out the normal Locked On College Basketball show with Isaac and Andy. They'll do an excellent job breaking down the bracket. March is here, so be the most informed on college basketball. And it's going to be throughout Madness and beyond. So be the most informed and find Locked On College Basketball on your YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast, and keep joining us for excellent coverage of the sport that you love and we love. Thank you guys. I'm Leaf Tulane. I'll be signing off, and I'm so thrilled it's March, and I hope you guys are as well.